An excellent speech. I think it's absolutely right for him to strike a generous tone towards Remainers. I understand that there's a lot of irritation, aggravation about the decision to leave, but it's right that both sides should try as far as possible to be kindly towards each other.
Was Boris Johnson the right person to make that pitch, though?
Well, I think everybody should be doing it, but yes, because Boris had such a high-profile role in the campaign, there is perhaps a greater duty on him to be magnanimous about the result. So yes, I think he is the right man to have done it.
And in terms of detail, did we get any greater clarity on the sort of deal that the Cabinet is seeking to negotiate?
Well, he made a remark about the Lancaster House and Florence speeches being like Moses' tablets of stone, and I think that does reiterate that that is the government's position. So it is out of the customs union and out of the single market. And that's very important because without those, we in the end aren't leaving the European Union.
I thought he left the door open on regulation, though, because he was asked by one of my colleagues about this suggestion we would be able to have control of our own regulatory framework. And he suggested, well, yes, but we could choose. We could choose to accept EU regulations.
I think that's just common sense. Even the most hard-nosed Eurosceptics don't want to say no to a European regulation that is sensible out of cussedness. There are many regulations that come from a higher level, come from international agreements, that will be applied in the EU, in America, in Japan. It would be eccentric for the UK to say, well, as Europe's got it, we're not having it. So what matters is that we decide, and if we think the regulation isn't suitable, we can say no. But if there is some guideline that we need that is internationally accepted, then I think what Mr. Johnson is saying is extremely rational.
We saw you giving the Brexit Secretary, David Davis, a roasting a couple of weeks ago. You're much more encouraged now by Boris Johnson. Does that suggest that you feel confident that Mrs. May is moving in your direction and away from that of Philip Hammond over the end deal?
Well, it was gentle questioning of the Secretary of State, who was completely on top of the subject. But I think that Florence and Lancaster House and the Conservative Party manifesto are the foundation stones of what we're going to do. I've got absolute confidence in the Prime Minister, who has a great reputation for sticking to what she believes in. She's very stoic and forthright and, to some extent, stubborn. And that's a great quality in a Prime Minister.
Briefly on transition, though, we've heard Monsieur Barnier saying there's no chance of us getting any sort of veto. And by the way, freedom of movement must continue as is. If Mrs. May accepts that, what happens?
I think freedom of movement is really difficult because that's one of the most important aspects of taking back control. And it would be bizarre to be in a position where outside the European Union we have to accept laws that inside the European Union we could veto. So the financial transactions tax, the common corporation tax base, both of those we could veto inside the European Union. And I think it's unreasonable, Mr. Barnier, to expect that we would just roll over and allow those laws to come in, which could have a very profound effect on our competitiveness.
Jacob Rees Mogg, thank you.